Whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. I started selling rocks at 5 years old on the side of the street. When I told my mom I was starting a company, she about had a heart attack. Choose your hard.
Mhm.
Being healthy is hard. Being overweight is hard.
Yeah.
Being rich can sometimes be hard. Being poor can be hard. What are you trying to achieve?
Welcome back, investor, to another episode of Passive Income Adventures. I have my friend Brandy Vega from Utah with us today. Say hello, Brandy.
Hi, guys. How's it going?
So, some of you from Utah may know Brandy from her work with her video production company. Brandy and I are in an entrepreneurial mastermind together. And I wanted to have you on the show because, one, we talk a lot about the adventures we can go on when we don't have to think about how are we going to pay for it and how are we going to have time to do it. Not saying that these adventures are like we're so independently wealthy that we don't have to think about money
Oh,
anymore.
I'm taking my private yacht. Don't worry about it. No, it might be a cruise ship, though, but go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you just have to be creative in how you figure out how to design your life so that you can go do these amazing things like a month-long cruise or starting a nonprofit or the things that you're doing where you're really putting your money where your mouth is and balancing with raising a family, balancing it, running your own business. You have the perfect kinds of stories that guests on the show should have. And then what our listeners really looking for is people who are actually out there doing it, not just peddling the dream because they have some investment or something that you should totally get out of this investment, but people who are actually doing it. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about your story, your background, and how you can help the listener figure out how to take more passive income adventures.
Yay.
Can
I'm excited because I really love all that stuff and it resonates with me. We didn't come from money. We didn't come from an entrepreneurial type group. I never even knew what investing was. It was like, how do we get through today? And
Mhm.
so I understand a lot of things from that aspect. But what I've learned over the last 5, 6 years is whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right.
Yes.
And if you want to improve your life and move up, who are you surrounding yourself with and what are you willing to do so that you can have that freedom?
Exactly. And that's, I think, what I've gotten most out of like Zenith, where you and I first met, is it wasn't necessarily like a real estate investing group, which is where I spend a lot of my time with other real estate investors. I was looking for a group that just was more general entrepreneurship, general investing, and just general lifestyle design, which I feel like I'm in the room with people who either have done it or are working on doing it. But everybody in the room believes that it's possible. And that's the big difference. And nobody's telling you, like, hey, I want to build a passive income lifestyle where I can go on cruises for a month at a time. And I have to figure out how to pay for it, but I have the creativity and the humility to do what it takes to make this happen. And nobody's, oh, that's dumb.
Yeah.
There's so much support there. And can you walk us through when you're talking about you got to get food today, you're figuring out how to just make ends meet to where you are now, where you're able to think in a
Sure.
broader sense about your bigger community and both having fun and helping others.
Well, Emma, like life is what's given, opportunity is what's taken. And every one of us have an opportunity each day that we get up to figure that out. And I didn't figure that out until later on in life. For me, my childhood was pretty rough. It was hard, single parent, and like we went hungry and where we're cold. And I started selling rocks at 5 years old on the side of the street to try to earn money. And I bought my own braces because I was ashamed to laugh. I lied about my age. I worked as a maid. I've always had to be a little bit of that entrepreneur just for the necessities. I graduated high school, which was the goal. My family's like, just graduate because none of them had. And so
Okay.
just graduating high school was a big deal, but I didn't know how I was going to pay for college. And so I ended up joining the army, which opened a lot of doors and taught me a lot of things. I joined the army as a broadcast journalist, public affairs specialist, went all over the world, did that. I was reporting for Fox News when I was just 20 years old. I
Mhm.
was the youngest reporter they had. And then I worked in TV for about 15 years after that in fields similar. And that's tough. If it bleeds, it leads. And you don't make much money and your hours stink. I
Yeah.
worked graveyards, I worked whatever hours. And it was about, I did a story with a guy after the Haiti earthquake. I went
Mhm.
to interview a CEO of a company and he was volunteering his time to go rescue people. And I did a story with him and I was really impressed with what he was able to do. Long story short, he ended up hiring me and I went to work for him and I was able to see how other people were doing it. I was able to be inspired that, wow. So I helped build his business for about 3 years. And after doing that, I thought, I could build my own business. I could do this.
Yep.
But I never had anybody encouraging me or telling me, that was just never a thing. When I told my mom I was starting a company, poor girl, she about had a heart attack. She was like, "What are you doing? That's so scary. Oh my gosh, you're taking on debt. What if you can't pay your bills?" I'm like, "We'll see." And it's been a really great 10 years.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess that just underscores who you hang out with and who's giving you support, who's being negative. I remember when I first started my real estate business, it was with the intention at first of just protecting my husband from getting laid off because in tech, you're like, it's
Yeah.
not if, it's when. Very quickly, I was like, wait a second, like this could actually retire him early. Like this could be really a ticket. And there was a lot of fear from our immediate group, especially when we talked about him quitting his job because we had this stable kind of source of income. There was a lot of fear that they instilled in us because they're your close circle. You're hanging out a lot together and they're asking legitimate questions because there's no certainty that you're going to succeed. And even though you had a mentor who showed you how this works, like, there's a reason not everybody goes and starts a business. So the more people you can surround you with who are going to support you and not just by telling you lies. Oh, I'm sure it's going to be great. You're wonderful. They're actually giving you tactical advice on how to help you through it. So he was that for you. And you thought, okay, when you're around him, I can do this. But then when you get around some naysayers, they're like, you can't do this. So how did you balance those? And how did you have the courage to go off and do it anyway?
That was interesting because when I went to build my studio, my video production company's Vega Media Studios, and I remember I brought somebody that I was working with before. I said, I think I'm going to do this. And he literally told me I was an idiot. He said, "Oh my gosh, you're an idiot. If you don't have at least a couple $1 million to sink into this, you're never going to make it."
Hmm.
And I remember taking that and I was like, I don't really appreciate what you just said. And it made me work harder. And
Yeah.
so I fought, and it was like such a victory because a year later he came back and he said, "I'm wrong. I owe you an apology." And that felt really good because building this studio and doing the work I was doing, I made more in 1 year than I had made in 20 previous years of my other career. And that was an eye opener to me because I didn't understand that. I worked, I had a 9 to 5. I wish it was a 9 to 5, but I had a set job.
You too.
I had a job with a set paycheck that didn't really grow with my amazingness, right? And so I was just like, wow, I have the ability to build so much more and do so much more. And one of the other turning points, we talked about zenithmastermind.com if people are interested. I love this group because it doesn't matter if you're succeeding in business if you suck at your home. Play is falling apart, if your health is out of whack. And so they focus on faith, family, finances, fitness, fun, philanthropy, all these things that I love. But I had actually met Jeff Lamb.
Hmm.
I was a single mom. I had my 2 girls and I went to go buy bunnies and I found them online on a classified site. I show up to this beautiful gated neighborhood to buy $10 bunnies. So when I get there, I think, wow, this place is incredible. Oh my gosh, what kind of person can live here? I was at the barn. I thought it was the main house. That tells you anything. I was like, "Oh my gosh." He's like, "That's the barn. The house is up here." And that was the original Walker Mansion. And just sitting there talking to a very humble, very personable, out there working with the animals, miniature horses, and all these things. And I'm there, and I just thought, he said, "I'm on the board of the theater. I'm on the board of the aquarium. I'm on the board of the Heart Association." 6 nonprofits. I've been sitting on their board for years. And I had just started my nonprofit, Good Deed Revolution. And I just thought, I could use a mentor. And he had a guest house. And I was like, "Is that place available for rent?" "No." I said, "If that ever opens up, can I rent it? I'll sell my house and I'll
Hmm.
come and rent from you." That doesn't make sense, right? In real estate. But I was like, the opportunity is worth it. And I called him every year for 4 years. "Hey, is that guest house available?" "No." "Oh, hi, is that guest house available?" Because I knew if I could get to proximity with
Yeah.
him, he could maybe mentor me and teach me. And long story short, the 4th year, it was just like, "Oh, for Pete's sake, the cottage in the back's open. Go ahead, lady, move in." And so I sold my house. I moved in and I was just like, "Teach me everything." And I just wanted to be in that circle. And then looking back at that now, just the doors that have opened. And I would have never thought that technically we're partially retiring this year. We bought the motorhome. We're taking a 4 to 6 week trip. We are taking a month-long cruise. I'm still working on things and I'm running my nonprofit Promise to Live, which is my passion. Life is hard. And I volunteered at the hospital a long time doing Nobody Dies Alone in spiritual care. And last year, my own mom almost passed away. My daughter, who I've been fighting for 5 years with mental health and suicide, just fighting to keep her alive, she's doing fantastic. She
I'm glad to hear
graduated
that.
early.
Nice.
She's doing an incredible job, but she moved out a year early, and that was just devastating. I was thankful for the extra time, but then I lost a year I thought I had. And my little boy, I have a little boy I adopted through foster care, and he was born on meth, and he's had some problems, and so we've been trying to navigate this with him. And as I was sitting there taking on more and more responsibility, I just thought, why am I doing all this? If you can't enjoy the life you have because of the work you're doing, then is it really a good life? And so I sold the one company, sold the house, moved closer, shut down a business. And this year for me is all about faith, family, and philanthropy. That's it.
Yeah.
Travel, fun, enjoy.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So there are so many people out there who have really good intentions, but they can't make their reality match up with their intentions because they can't afford to quit that major source of income of those multiple streams of income so that they can go focus on what you just mentioned. Can you give the listener a couple of tips on how you were able to build your lifestyle so that you could eventually say, I really value these things. And we have to be able to keep the lights on and pay for our lifestyle, figure out how we're going to pay for this stuff without having to commute, work weird graveyard shifts, or be strapped to your business.
Yeah. I think first and foremost, when you ask that question, the thing that comes to my mind is I've just tried to be very smart. I've tried to be frugal in things that don't matter. If I go out to eat, it's always a challenge for me to drink water. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to drink water. Why?
Mhm.
Because one, when I was younger, soda was expensive, but two, I need to drink water to be healthy. So I would make these little choices that just add up so that I could book the vacation and do the fun things. So I think number one, live within your means and start saving and start learning from people that are doing what you want to do. Don't learn from the gurus who promise you the world and deliver you nothing, but go find somebody who's literally doing what you're doing or what you want to do and ask them for guidance. So we did that, but you know what? Actually, it's real
Mhm.
estate what got us to this next level. I bought a house. I don't know. I've had quite a few rentals over the years, but I bought a house. I turned it into a triplex. I have my base at 2000. I'm renting it out for 6500. That gives you some flexible money after all is said and done. And I have now 4 or 5 rentals, and it just makes it really a lot easier because you can go and have some of that freedom. So for me, real estate gave me freedom, and then getting with good mentors and finding out about investing. What are
Yes.
good investments? And then even just starting small and saying, okay, I can't do much, but I can do 500 or 5,000 or 50 or 500, like wherever you are in your life, starting with the principle based of small and steady. I think that wins the race. And I just wish I would have known a lot more 20 years ago. But you know what? I was talking to a friend today who's 60, and he said to me, "Ah, you're in such a great place." And I
Yeah.
just had to sit there for a minute and I thought, I am in a pretty good place. But you know what I said? I said, if I would have known half the things now that I know, I think of where I could have been 20 years ago and how much further along I could have been. But you know what? The most important thing is to start today.
Yeah.
Now.
Yep. Exactly. We have a lot of people who call us like, with our fund and they want to invest. And we only can invest with accredited investors. And they're like, I'm not accredited. I'm 60 years old. I don't know what to do. I thought that real estate was a faster way to build wealth. And now I'm finding that it's not as get rich quick as they thought that it was and just very discouraged. So
Yeah.
I know what I tell them. What would you tell somebody in that position?
Oh, I wanna hear what you tell him because I'm like, "Tell me, tell me."
Again, you have to start today. You have to start with where you are. Are you okay with doing an active hustle to make some more money, to get some more active income? And are you committed to finding places to put that extra active income that you're not living on, way below your means, to be able to invest that? I don't want to say riskily, but aggressively, like a large proportion of your income needs to be invested. And how long could you not touch it to let it compound? Because the magic is compounding. To reduce risk, you must compound, right? If you're looking to pull the money out and live on it, then you're going to introduce a level of risk because you're chasing those higher returns. And I just don't think that's worth it. I think it's a tortoise in the hare game where sometimes it looks like you're going faster because you're going in something that could have a 20 or 30 or 40% rate of return. But then if you lose that money, then you're negative 100% return. And so I feel like it's really important to balance safety with risk. It's important to say you got to keep working, and nobody wants to hear that. But you mentioned something about just doing a job that you have a passion, running a nonprofit you have a passion for, a company that you have a passion for. It's like figuring out your highest and best use of your career time or your active working time was something you really care about. So for me, real estate wasn't just about making a lot of money. I used to be a real estate photographer. I actually like houses. I learned graphic design from drawing floor plans. My mom was designing our house when I think I was like 10. It was like our dream home, right?
Yeah.
And we would go around into all the parade of homes and get all the little papers with the floor plans on. I was just fascinated with these things. I actually like real estate and I feel like I like photography and I had a photography business for a while. But looking at scaling that was overwhelming versus scaling my real estate business was more exciting and had a higher potential. And so I just, okay, if photography made more money, I would have done that. But
Uh,
you just have to find something that you're really passionate about and go basically be willing to work harder and be willing to compound harder and live below your means. Nobody wants to hear that. It's sad and almost scary, but at the same time hopeful because it's you can still do this. Nobody's talking about private jets. We're just talking about being able to retire and maybe work some fun jobs, some little
well,
things that are interesting.
I love like Jeff, right? We go on the trip. He's sold businesses for hundreds of millions. He's worth a lot of money. We go on a trip and he's like, "Hey, I'm trying to get a group coupon." And
Yes,
I,
he's going to Costco. Like, y'all run out of
yeah,
Costco picks. I'm like, Jeff, you do your own Costco?
yeah, I know. And it's so funny because we were doing our trip and I negotiated a deal for us. And everybody's like, "Good job." I was like, "I saved us on a group rate." I think part of the fun as a business owner is seeing what is your return on your investment? Where are you putting your money? Where are you putting your time? Somebody asked me this question earlier last year, I guess, that helped me make that decision. They said, if money were no object, what would you do? And I think that's the question. And when they said, if money were no object, what would you do? I said, I would do promise to live. Why? Because my return on investment there are lives saved. We're making a difference in suicide prevention and mental health. I got a second chance. It's my passion and I just want to pay it forward. So they're like, then do that. Focus on that. And I
Yes.
also, for the first time in my entire life, had a coach who told me last year this because I have a hard time saying no. I love doing so many things. I'm like,
Yes.
I love video production. I
Yes.
love media. I love all of it. Sign me up. But then you go, I have to sleep sometime. When
Yeah.
am I going to do that? And he told me that nothing becomes important until you say no to things that are important.
Mm.
And that was hard for me. So I told one of my clients, I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm going to take the rest of the year off. Like, I need, and that was very hard for me because I love that client. I love that job, but I wanted that time. And as I gathered around the holidays, just really thinking about what matters most to me, I was like, it's not all the things, it's freedom. So, us having the ability to go and travel the world, I've literally worked the equivalent of 2 jobs for 30 years. I've never had the opportunity to be bored. I don't even know what that feels like. I'm so excited to try it,
What's
but
up?
I can't wait to be bored. That's what this road trip is about. I know you hiked across the country. Like,
It was
probably
I was boring. Like, I sing a lot of partial songs in my head. I'm like, I've been singing this partial song in my head for 3 days trying to find a place where I could get to a cell service so I could look up the lyrics and screenshot it so I could actually sing the song. What am I doing out here? Why am I spending all of these weeks and months walking while I sing stupid songs from the '90s in my head? It felt so pointless and boring, but yet at the same time, like the coolest thing I've ever done.
yeah, I just want these as I sit with patients doing Nobody Dies Alone,
Yes.
I sit with millionaires who were there alone, and I was their only person there holding their hand when they
Oh,
took their last breath. I sat with people who were experiencing homelessness and had nobody. Like it didn't discriminate. And what was really manifested to me at that moment is people wouldn't complain about what they complained about what they didn't do. And it was
yes.
never like, I wish I would have worked more. Or I wish I would have, everybody wanted to have more relationships and spend more time. So when you talk about this stuff, we bought a motorhome. Did I go out and buy a brand new $500,000 motorhome? No, I didn't. I bought a used one that I was like, we can drive this around for a year. If we love it, we'll keep it. If we don't, we'll
Now
break a
it's
break even on
no
it.
more.
You have all these memories. And I love that.
Yes.
And same thing
Yep.
with our cruise. I'm like, I don't care where I sleep. It's just having the freedom. What is the freedom? We're not living
Yes.
this grandiose, highfalutin life, but I'm so excited that I don't have to work unless I want to work.
Yep.
And
Yes.
that piece that comes with knowing, hey, all my bills are paid for. Anything I choose to do, I can choose to do without that debt of how am I going to do it? That
Yes.
dread. And so that's what real freedom is to me. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It matters if the money has you. That's what I think
Yeah.
is, who's working for what and why.
And then the question that you asked, if money were no object, that's the first half of the question. So you answered the second half of the question, what would you do? But then you have to go out and make the first half happen. How do I make money be no object? And it's not like Jurassic Park, no expense spared. That's not what we're talking about. It's like, how are we going to go make this happen? So the passion is over here. How am I going to make money, not the barrier? And I think what changed my thinking on that was 4-hour work week. And he was talking about at the beginning of the book where he's saying
Mhm.
your dream is to circumnavigate Switzerland on a bicycle. He's just a hypothetical, crazy thing that you want to do. And he said, most people just sit around and talk about how someday they're going to ride around Switzerland on a bicycle. And he said, but have you ever actually priced it out and sat down and said, how much exactly does this cost? How much exact time would I need off work to do this? Am I willing to quit my job and then come back and find a new job? Am I willing to put my stuff in storage and come back and find a new apartment or rent my house out while I'm gone? Or these kinds of things. And I was like, wow, you're giving up your dream of circumnavigating Switzerland on a bicycle for $6,500. And
Yeah.
he said that, I just sat back and I thought, $6,500? That's it? We wanna go see the solar eclipses in Spain. There are 2 of them in a 12-month period. Can we afford a year in Spain? And ChatGPT is like breaking it all down for me. Like this option costs $10,000. This option will cost 15, but then you can rent out your house at home, which offsets the thing. It just plans it all out for me. And I'm really using that like $6,500 to circumnavigate Switzerland on a bicycle. And it completely changes that money being no object mindset. Have you had experiences similar to that where you're like, oh, I can make it work by this?
Yeah. Again, it comes down to that whether you think you can or whether you think you can't. If you can visualize, and again, I'm not just talking about, oh, visualization, everything comes to you, manifest it. No,
Yeah.
ask, seek, knock, expect miracles, put in the work, move one foot in front of the other, but be smart. What is it? What is the need? What am I good at? How can I do that? Who's doing that? And studying it and looking at it. That was what we did last year because I was starting this new company and I had friends that wanted to invest. We're talking, millions of dollars. And I'm sitting there thinking, is this what I'm passionate about? No,
Mhm.
it's not what I'm passionate about, but I see the return. This is a needed product. It's so important. But then I thought, would I give up for 60, 40, 80 hours, 100 hours a week for this and the lack of sleep and all these things? And then it was like, why am I building this? Because it has a potential to be $1 billion company. And that's exciting to me. But then not being able to sleep at night was not exciting to me because I've been there before. And we sat down and we crunched all of our numbers and we said, with your income and with this income and with this, we're fine.
Yep.
Why am I working so much? Let's just go enjoy life. And that's the thing. So we sat there and we planned this trip cross country, go see all of our family and friends, spend a week and just take as much time as we want. And you put it in and it's that's all it costs.
Yep. You
That's it.
totaled up. Yep.
Yeah. And
And
that
then
was the same thing on our 32-day cruise. I'm like, a family of three going on a 32-day cruise for 6 grand total.
yes.
Yeah, that's what I said. I'm like, you can't eat out for a month at that price.
Yes.
So I get to go see the world, see all these beautiful places, spend quality time with my family. Yeah, I need an internet package because I'm not totally off the hook. And I
Mhm.
have a lot of things I'm working on with my nonprofit, but I also have people. And so I think it's taking that and visualizing it and say, is this important enough for me to work towards? Because if it's not, and another thing, Emma, that's really the last couple of years, I was watching this video and it was a blob of heart cells just in this bunch. And then they turned on the frequency music and it started forming all these beautiful patterns. And it talked about the frequency and vibration and who are you surrounding yourself with? The mentors, the music, the media, your feelings. And so I started spending a lot of time looking into things like, oh, how can you create things that you want? More than just manifesting, right? Dr. Bruce Lipton, Joe Dispenza, some of these guys, and they say, make your vision board. We had done those things. But I think in the last 3 years, actually learning about how your body and mind respond to things, planning the trip and saying, we're going on that trip. we're going to make it happen. That's it. Like it's going to happen. And you put a plan in action because nothing happens until you make it happen. And
Yes.
it's funny how it does, right? It's, oh, hey, we have, do you, can you?
Yes. I told my husband back when I wanted to leave everything for an RV trip. I knew some, we call them world schoolers, where they homeschool their kids and just live abroad places. I still think I would love to be like a world schooler. So we started going to world schooling meetups. And I would ask them, like, how do you handle your kids not having their friends around? How do you handle the transient nature of all of that? And they had a lot of different advice, but the one that really got me, he said, we spend far more time with our family now than we ever did before because we can go to wherever they are and spend a couple of weeks there or a month there and then go to the next old high school friend that we haven't seen. He said, we are basically planning our trips and our lives around where our people are because they're scattered around. And we have so much more quality time together now than we ever did. And my kids are forming relationships with cousins or my friends' kids or whatnot. And then when they go abroad, even if it's for a year, they have this home base that they keep coming back to. And I thought, okay, we can actually do this. And I told my husband, I said, we can afford the RV, we can afford all that on the rental income. I said, but we can't afford to keep our house at the same time. Like we can't have an
Yeah.
empty house. So we either need to rent it out or we're gonna have to sell it and figure out what we're gonna do for housing when we come back. And
Yeah.
it's a big ask because it wasn't just, hey, I'm gonna have water at a restaurant. It was like the big rock here is
Hey,
the
let's leave
house.
our house.
Yeah, but you did the same thing where you're like, I want to spend time with Jeff. I'm gonna sell my house and you're gonna make the sacrifice that you need to do to figure out how to make this thing happen. And Jeff was one of those guys that he has a zillion friends. You go to his birthday party and he had like 100 people telling stories about how
Yeah.
deeply he impacted them. And I'm like, how does he do this? And I even get a little bit jealous when people are like, oh yeah, Jeff, because we know each other, but we're not like buddies. But I do get a little bit jealous because he's the kind of person who just deeply touches everybody that he's around. And you recognize that. And the story that you just told about the lengths that you were willing to go to get him in your life, I think I'm just going to use that forever because people are like, where do I hang out with successful rich people? You don't just go pick them up at Home Depot.
Yeah.
What you did there, with the rabbit thing, that was a coincidence. But at the same time, like when you're around that stuff, you recognize it and you're like, how do I get more of this in my life? And you pursued it until you figured out how to make it work. And that right there, I don't know, we could probably just end the podcast, but we won't. We'll talk about your nonprofit too.
No, and I agree with that. And I'm actually, so I've been on the Women Who Succeed too, which is from the Kathy Gurr group here in Utah. And I've been a mentor for 4 years,
Mhm.
mentoring high school and college girls in STEM. Why do I do that? Because I just can imagine what that would have meant to me.
Yes.
And having Jeff and some of these other very successful people who mentored me for the last 10 years and helped bring me up to where I am right now, because I know that I couldn't have done all of this alone. So finding that and recognizing it and paying it forward, I think is super important. But stuff doesn't just happen. Like you do have to go in there and make it happen. And one of the things that I used to not do that I do now is sometimes you have to invest in yourself.
Mhm.
That was hard for me when you're just struggling to get by. It's like
Yeah.
investing. And I'm not talking about, oh, I need a mommy makeover, although that might be nice. I'm talking about paying to go to some of these retreats, paying to be in the room with people who are successful that want to help you.
Yes.
That did change everything for me. I'm like, oh, do I want to pay 300 a month or whatever it is? Maybe a lot more, but was it worth it? And I'll just tell you one other story. I signed up for a networking group about 5 or 6 years ago, and I was so busy at my studio that I paid a monthly fee, and it was around 350 a month. I paid it every single month. For 11 months, I didn't make one of the events because it was just like times I couldn't. But
Yes.
guess what happened on the 12th month? I went to one of the events. I met a dear lady there. We became good friends. She's hired my company. We've done tens of thousands of dollars worth of business. And that's also how I got involved in the Women Who Succeed. And so you look at that and it's one relationship. It's
Yeah.
takeaways. So I have now a group who, and I'm very selective with my time because that's my most precious resource.
Mhm.
But there's a group that's been trying to get me to join. And I'm saying, you know what? Let's join because I know the power of relationships.
Mhm.
I know the power of the friends and being in the right room with the right people. And
Yes.
so sometimes you have to look at that and say, okay, am I willing to invest? X amount of dollars for this event, this mastermind, this trip. And for me, it's paid off tenfold.
Yes. And it doesn't always pay off in this directly attributable way. Like when we went to the Miami retreat, our first Zenith retreat, and I met Lance King and he was talking on fitness, right? He's a personal trainer. And he has this apartment building that his wife's grandma passed away and it was in an estate and they didn't know what to do with it. We were chatting about apartments. Turns out I have one 5 minutes down the road. And he was like, "Can you help my family buy this one? We'll partner with you." That was a very obvious and direct outcome of
Yeah.
and I didn't want to go. I thought it was too expensive and I couldn't justify showing up. And then it kept getting yanked around from COVID. It's in Mexico now, it's in Miami. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is getting so much more expensive. And we finally just sucked it up and we went. I could only pay for me to be in the class. My husband and my daughter were off doing things with the women.
Yeah. So with mine, poor guy, it was like, go with the women.
Our husbands were like, maybe let's hang out together. But
Yeah.
I just feel like that one thing there justified me showing up. But not only did it justify me showing up that one time, right? Then I started showing up to more of them. And I thought, this one thing now justifies me showing up to all the things in the future, even if I never get another deal or
Right.
another. But what I've noticed is that just the camaraderie and the relationships and the walking away from there feeling, you know what, I can do whatever it is. That's been worth more money. Even though I may not have done a specific deal after that particular retreat, I feel like I walked away ready to do deals in general and ready to
Yeah.
focus on my family in general, and ready to do all those things in general. Yeah, I'm hanging out with those people. That has been worth more. You can't measure that financially.
Right. And I agree with that. Where else do you get an opportunity to hang out with people who want to help you that
Yes.
are millionaires and billionaires? And then you've got up and comers. And that's one thing I love is this immersive mentorship. So
Yes.
this isn't a pitch. I feel like I'm pitching Zenith. I'm not, but I'm just saying I am.
It's an
But
affordable group too, which is why I like it because they're not doing it because they're trying to make a bunch of money off the guru men.
300 a year?
It's
Yes. Okay. And I'm going to dinner. I get dinner 4 times.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
of
then you
course.
pay as you go on the retreats, and so I'll
Yeah.
give you an example. When we went to Mexico, my husband's passport had expired, and so I was to my kid, "Who has a passport?" And my daughter's, "I have a passport." So I took her to Mexico. I think she was
Yeah.
18 at the time, and as we were flying home, she said, "I think I'm a victim of the TikTok woke because rich people are evil, rich people are greedy, and all the problems and blah, 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 blah." She goes, "Those are the nicest people I've ever met in my entire life." And I said, "To be fair, they're a very generous cross section of wealthy people, but it's not just hanging out with wealthy people. It's hanging out with wealthy people who just want to pay it forward and just
Yeah.
want to help people." She said, "Nobody in there had any reason to speak to me because I'm 18 years old and I can do nothing for them. But they were like adopting her as a little surrogate granddaughter and spending time helping her build her dreams and find her
Yeah.
focus." And that to me, again, was worth whatever we paid to go on that trip, to have her recognize success is not evil.
That's so true. And you know what? We do have 18-year-olds come on our trip. A lot of the people end up bringing their children.
Mhm.
And I think it's fantastic because imagine if we're teaching the up and coming generation how to be successful and not having to go through the school of hard knocks like we did.
Mm.
And that's what it's been. When you talk to people about, okay, how do I invest? What do I do? How do I find freedom? Freedom comes in like the little things that you're doing. What are you willing to do? Mentorship, surrounding yourself with the right people, looking for things, building your dream and your vision, and then acting upon it, not sitting back passively. You got to be actively engaged in some of this stuff, but then it will allow you if you choose. I've got friends who are very successful. They hate their life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why do you hate your life? I work all the time. Nobody appreciates me. I'm like, why? Why are you doing that? You have a choice. You get to choose what you want to do. And what's the cost of success to you? 'Cause if it's your health and your happiness, then that's too high.
Yeah. We had some friends in some of our homeschool groups who I disagreed with the lifestyle choice, but listening to them talk about why, I could at least maybe start to respect it a little bit. They chose not to work while their kids were little and basically just live on public assistance and do enough work to qualify for the food stamps and the couch surfing with their kids or the shed in the backyard type of living situation. And I disagree with that on a political level, but at the same time, listening to them talk about like the sacrifices that they were willing to make to spend more time with their kids. And that's an extreme example using a technique I don't agree with. But at the same time, it taught me a lot about what we can put up with and what we can live with in order to facilitate this greater good. And they're like, my kids are only going to be little for a small amount of time, 2, 3 kids. They grow up really fast. And then we'll go and we'll get our jobs and we'll do our things because the teenagers don't need us around quite as much. And I'm like, okay, you know what? They're making their choices and they're living their life. But it did cause me to reflect and think, am I prioritizing money and things and even experiences over spending time with them because the amount of time we spend working make up for the little bit of time that we're at Disneyland.
Yeah.
And maybe it doesn't, but each of us have to dig into the layers of why, like you're saying, answer that question for ourselves.
And when you're talking about that, I'm thinking of choose your hard.
Mhm.
Being healthy is hard. Being overweight is hard.
Yeah.
Being rich can sometimes be hard. Being poor can be hard. What are you trying to achieve? If you're trying to achieve the minimum so that you can qualify for assistance, would that require the same amount of effort as trying to achieve the maximum so you needed no assistance?
Yeah.
Like it's where you put your focus and your
Yes.
energy determines what your outcome's going to be. And we all do it a little bit differently, but there are equations that you could put to work.
Yes, exactly. Oh man. And it's just these kinds of conversations. I feel like over the years of attending these events together, like you and I have become friends. People, it's another thing. It's like, oh, how did you meet somebody who's, oh, she does this or she does that? And I'm like proud to say that I know you type of thing. I think to myself, I paid the money to be in the room and go to the retreats and do the things. And people are like, how do you meet people like this? And I feel like it was by design and very intentional and purposeful to be in the room with people who are doing the things. And a lot of the people in there are not billionaires. They're
No,
probably millionaires, but they're just doing really cool stuff and they're a great influence no matter where they are on that spectrum.
they're awesome people investing of themselves and their time in becoming better and enjoying life on all the levels so that they can have the balanced life.
Which I did
There
not.
were, there were some new people that I didn't know. I know a lot of the people, and they're people who I had never met doing incredible things. And you know what I said last year? I said, I need a building for my nonprofit, Promise to Live. I want to find a building that somebody can donate to a 501(c)(3) for a write off with the economy and stuff. It's better for them to get a full value write off if they can donate it. And it
Nice.
makes sense. So that's been what I've been putting out there. I've never done it before.
Hey,
I was like, how do I get a building? You know what? I was putting out too. I'm like, I need employees. We're volunteer staff doing a ton of amazing work. But I was like, how do I get employees? So I meet these guys and I have this whole meeting with them. And then they say, hey, we've got this building. We're looking for a nonprofit to move in. And I was like, really? So I went and I toured the building and they're like, yeah, you could just be here rent free. Fantastic for my nonprofit. Oh, we can't support you financially, but I have like several employees. They can work for you and help you with your work. I was like, what? Then we go on the Zenith trip. And through this trip, I meet people who own other buildings.
hmm
Well, I've got more options saying, hey, we'd do that same deal in Salt Lake. And it's okay. Then you look at that and you start putting the value on some of these things. I met Jeff through this. I went here. I did that. I met this person. I met this person. They introduced me here. And you look at all these relationships that lead you to the things that you're pursuing. If I hadn't put out that I was looking for a building, they wouldn't have introduced me to the guy who had a building who never mentioned it.
yes.
But then they did. And then that opened a door. Why? Because I wasn't cold calling saying, hey, do you have a building you want to donate to my nonprofit? I'm like, hey, it was so fun hanging out with you last week. I absolutely loved that. I'd love to see your building. And
Yeah.
now we're friends. I think if there's one piece of advice, like for people, is become friends, invest, put the time and energy into building relationships without expectation, but also having your vision and your goals present, and then see what happens. If you can be genuine about it,
And
see how you can help others.
a lot of times it goes nowhere and we have to be okay with that. And I'll give you an example. We attended a wedding a couple of years ago. And when we showed up, it was like all our real estate buddies, right? And it was our Zenith buddies and our real estate buddies all in the same room. And a couple of months later, we went to a funeral for one of them and we all showed up. It was all of us again. And I thought, I've never done a deal with most of these people in here, but I'm friends with all of them. And we show up for the weddings and we show up for the funerals.
Yeah.
You can't put a price tag on that because if we're talking about money being no object so we can live like the life that we want to live, those relationships that we're using to figure out a way to make money not the object, those relationships become the life that we're trying to live in the first place.
And from that too, you don't know what the future holds with those relationships, like
Mm,
the one with plants. I was sitting at a table talking to some young men
mhm.
about my nonprofit and the work we're doing. These are just kids. They're 18, 19 years old. we just happen to be sitting at the same table, strike up a conversation. I start talking to them about Promise to Live. And I was like, hey, you guys need to make a promise to live. And I'm all about this and just sharing my message because I care about them. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, our dad's a professional NBA player. Do you want me to connect you to him? I was like, yeah, I do. And he did. And he's been a big supporter of ours. And sometimes it's just being a good human
Yep.
and putting out that good energy and just saying, I'm going to help you. And if it helps me in the long run, fantastic. If it doesn't, it's still good because helping improves your mental health.
Yeah.
So,
It's amazing how all these coincidences happen.
yeah.
Coincidences happen when you put yourself around people who make coincidences happen.
And one other thought too, like people were more connected than ever, but we're more disconnected.
Yes.
I read a study somewhere, I can't remember where, but they basically said that 80% of people consider themselves shy. And I suffer from RBF. So I always look like I'm angry. I always look like I'm mad unless I'm trying not to.
Use of
And
Botox to go around like this all the time.
and I'm just like this. But no, I look like that. But the study said that 80% of people consider themselves shy, meaning we're afraid. And so I thought it's been always comfortable for me to be outgoing and to start conversations. But I decided about maybe 5 years ago or something that I would do what they do in the hotel industry, whatever. If you see a client coming up, you make eye contact, you say hi.
Yeah.
Or you at least make eye contact and wave if you're within 10 feet or
Yes.
15 feet. If you're within 5 feet, you say hello or how are you doing? And so I started making myself do that kind of stuff. Or if I get on an elevator, if I'm standing in line, wherever I'm at, I've started just making conversation because I realized most people are nice. They just don't want to talk. Then you never know where those conversations go. And it's been just awesome.
Yeah, I don't think I'm naturally shy. I think I developed it over the years of social interactions that didn't go well. And so then over time, developed defense mechanism to it. And it has to be like a conscious step to overcome that. And naturally, like I said, I'm not shy. And so it wasn't like too difficult for me to say, wait, what is happening to you?
Yeah.
You need to snap out of it. But it leads me to what you just said there. I know that some charisma researchers say the same thing. It's like the people in high school who are the most popular that other people say are the most popular, right, votes and surveys are the ones who are the nicest. And you think, no, it's the mean girls, it's the queen bee. No, it's the people who they make eye contact with you and they see you and they say hello and they have any kind of acknowledgement that you exist. And it's always the mean girl who never looks, who never says hello, pretends that they can't see you. But those are not the most popular. Those are the ones who have like their little group. But the ones who are actually the most popular, the most people really are the kind ones. And so I've been reading The Anxious Generation. He also wrote The Coddling of the American Mind. And he cites one of my favorite psychologists, Peter Gray, a lot. Peter Gray is a big unschooler, free to learn type of, we're not going to have too much structure in here, not too much rules. They keep citing Peter Gray in this book. He's like a play researcher and making it sound like, oh, we can't be on phones and we can't be on screens and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, Peter doesn't talk about that at all. I've met Peter. He does not, you need to give them the freedom to discover like how much screen time they can handle on their own terms and the guidance and all of that, but not like the rules and restrictions. So I'm really struggling with this book. And it has got me thinking a lot about like my own kids, their anxious generation. How are they doing? They're just starting to come to some of these networking meetings with me. And I've been thinking about you a lot as I've been reading it, which is why I'm like, I really want to have you on the show to talk about this. Just with the incidence of depression, anxiety in young people and older people who are using too much devices, too many screens.
Yeah.
And we've really tried to dive into what Peter Gray is teaching here in our own philosophy of self-harm, non-suicidal self-harm, and then suicide basically. Is it trendy? What is going on with and then some other things I read is like when somebody has a big accident, suicides in the area will go and increase afterwards. And these kind of connections about how suicide can be almost like contagious. And so I've really been
Yeah.
thinking about a lot of this the last couple of months. Not that my kids don't struggle with suicide, but they have been in some pretty dark places. And I
Yeah.
want to say that I'm living a life in a way that is inspiring to them, that they want to achieve and they want to contribute to their communities. But sometimes when they're struggling with their mental health, I feel like I'm failing to inspire the people who are closest to me to want, and they want it, but they don't see how they can get it. And then there's this like this hopelessness of feeling. What are you seeing there? How are you working on this in your nonprofit?
That's a tough one. I think connection, finding purpose with Promise to Live, and people can find more information as promise the number 2 live.org. Our whole thing is What's the power of a promise? Getting people to commit right now. Like promise to live is basically the seatbelt for your soul. We
Okay.
buckle up every day. We put our seatbelt on. Why? In case we crash. We ask people to make the promise to live in case they find themselves in a crisis. You're much more likely to stay alive if you've made a promise to reach out for help. So for us, the number one thing that we can do for all people everywhere is get them to commit and promise that they will reach out for help. And it
Got
could
it.
be 988, which people should know about. It's the 911 for mental health.
Yes.
So that's a resource you can call or text 24/7. The next thing is connecting. Because as you mentioned, while we're more connected than ever, we've never been more disconnected. And that's hard. There's an epidemic of loneliness that our US Surgeon General. So connecting and asking, there's one word I think that I teach will change everything. Instead of me saying, "Hey Emma, how are you?" If I say, "Hey Emma, how are you really?"
Uh,
When
yeah.
you add the word really, when you ask somebody something, so if I say, "Hey, how are you doing?" Really, or "How are you really doing?" All of a sudden, you don't get the cookie cutter canned answer that says, "I'm fine." You get the answer that says, "Struggling.
Yes.
It's hard right now." So if you want people to open up and even your kids, we teach this honest questions, get honest answers. So ask them the question, "Are you struggling? Have you thought about harming yourself?" So ours is commit, connect, and community. And we build communities with events, online, social. We know we have to reach them where they are. Kids are going to be on their phone and it's hard. It's hard enough for adults when I see
Or
that I'm not
the
invited to
phone.
something or somebody didn't like my thing or somebody's competing. I'm just like, oh, and
Yes.
I'm a grown woman feeling some of these feelings and I know how to regulate, but kids don't.
Yeah.
So reach out for help. I think that's the biggest thing. There's no cure all, fix all, but spending time with your family, loving your family, having a plan in place, like having financial help allows you to have that emotional well-being and that time with your family.
Yeah. It's just such a fascinating topic because on this show, we spend so much time talking about spending more time with loved ones. Yet I'm watching people in my own industry. So we're having a little bit of a multifamily real estate meltdown crisis right now. And people are losing money. Now, I lost 50 grand, right? We invested in a project. The bank took it back. And it was no big deal to me because it wasn't my project. I was just an investor.
Yeah.
And that sucked. But I'm talking to people who are losing hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then the managers of those projects who are having half a dozen properties foreclosed on. These are apartment buildings that are losing millions and millions of dollars of investor capital. And I'm not seeing that we're out of that yet. I'm seeing that in commercial real estate, those loans come due every 5 years, let's just say
Yeah.
on average. And we have some that are in like year three. And so even though they're good, stabilized properties, they're going to come up for refinance in a year and a half, 2 years. And I don't know where interest rates are going to be. Is the property going to be able to support the new loan? And I'm in that situation. What about somebody who's in that situation like times 10x? And
Yeah.
we're on social media trying to raise capital from investors talking about how great the passive income lifestyle is. And I'm at conferences watching people like that. I'm worried
Or
about their safety and their mental health. And because of social media, because they're having to project, not because they're consuming too much, but because they're having to project this image to continue to keep their business surviving that I can see in their eyes is not reality. So I
well,
don't think
we partnered with Silicon Slopes. We work with a lot of the tech startups. We're working with a lot of businesses. That's why it's critical you make a promise to reach out for help
okay.
if you find yourself in that situation. But more than that, everything can't be tied up to just your money, or else you run this risk. You've got to find hope and joy and purpose outside of it.
Mhm. Is it like a mom, a stay-at-home mom, when her last kid leaves the house and she doesn't have an identity outside of being a mom, and she has to dive in and discover that? It's like we're all wives, mothers, husbands, fathers, brothers, sisters. Like we all have multiple roles. And if we niche down a little too hard on that, we can lose a piece of ourselves. So provider, moneymaker, rich guy, whatever we identify with, it can be really destructive if we start to lose that piece of ourselves.
And if one crumbles, it takes you down on every level. And
It's
that's why, of course, the balance is good because we're all bound to face challenges, whether it be in health, wealth, whatever. So if you've got balance to at least sustain your foundation, hopefully you won't crumble. But if you base everything on one portal,
mhm.
one title, one job, one investment, then you run that risk.
Yeah. And I've also noticed, I did not talk to you about this beforehand, but I feel like there's this feeling of when you get to a certain age as a woman, everybody becomes annoying and you hate everyone and everything. And you have to figure out like a way out of that maze. Have you had to address that in your own life? I talked about this on the podcast a couple of weeks ago with the partner that we own the apartment building with lands. And we started talking about like hormone therapy and medication and what do you call it? Coaching, psychological therapy, things like this. And just how we're able to keep ourselves mentally healthy in these stressful situations. Is that something that comes up for you very often with like older middle-aged women?
It comes up with everybody,
Mhm.
honestly, like, especially men are our highest rate of suicides, but
Yes.
women are struggling too. We're all struggling. Life gets hard. And then you get to a point too where especially some of my 50-plus-year-old friends that are like, wow, my kids are gone. I don't have a relationship. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. So I don't know, we're all going through something and just trying to get through it. But I've never been happier personally because
What
I don't want to rub it in or anything,
no,
but my life's pretty amazing. I was on overload last year and I was just like, what is going on? And that's when I decided to unbury. So I think sometimes when you simplify to magnify, that's where you find the magic. And that's what I've done. Simplify to
yes.
magnify.
Yes. I feel like I had a great life, but I hated everyone and everything. And I went to my doctor and I said, "I hate everyone and everything." He said, "We can help you." And all of a sudden, within just like a week or 2, suddenly I love everyone and everything. And people say, "How are you doing?" And
No,
I'm like, "Actually, like I have some problems." Like it's just something that I've been starting to pay a lot more attention to in my own life as I'm watching my kids struggle through that transition to adulthood. And your foundation and what you stand for, especially the last couple times that we've met up as you've been building this. Just a fascinating topic. And I think that our listeners really do need to be aware money doesn't fix all your problems. You need to have a balanced approach to these other aspects of your life. Because, like you said, you can't work on one without working on all of them at the same time. They're interconnected. And if one is struggling, then they all kind of start to struggle. It's hard to be lopsided in this stuff. So addressing this as a holistic kind of a thing that you're doing. It's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful message. And I appreciate you taking the time to share it with my listener.
absolutely. And I'm so glad to hear you say you reached out for help because that's the one thing. And they were able to regulate it. So, number one, just reach out for help. Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun chatting.
Yeah. So, can you say again where people can find your nonprofit or how they can get a hold of you directly if they want to talk about things that we've talked about on the show?
Brandy Vega on LinkedIn, Facebook. You can find us at promise the number 2 live.org and you can get information there on how to contact us. We're always looking to partner with people. We're looking for all kinds of synergies and we just want people to stick around and enjoy the ride.
Yes, exactly. And Brandy, I'll just tell the listener, like you're one of the nicest people that I've ever met and the most
Aw,
giving with your time and your emotions. And I know that anybody who wants to reach out to you after the show, whether you can give them advice or help or whatever, point them in the right direction, somebody that you
yeah.
can make that introduction because you have extensively networked.
And they can get these cute pocket hugs too. These are our Promise to Live pocket hugs. And we've given out over 70,000 of these this year. So if times are tough and you don't know what to do, here's a hug from me to you. Call or text 988. So help us spread the message, help us give light and hope and love to the world, including yourself.
Yes, it's beautiful what you're doing and I appreciate you sharing it. And if you out there want to get more information, reach out to Brandy. Reach out to me, partnersrice.com/Emma, and we will get you hooked up with whatever you need that we've talked about today. We will point you in the right direction. And we really want to help you figure out how to pay for your next passive income adventure with both the money that you need to do it and the time that you need to do it because we're passionate about it and we know that it makes lives better and want to help you get to that point as well. Thank you for joining us. We'll talk to you next week.